this is Brad with Yargmetal, and today I'm talking with Howard Johnson. He is a world-renowned rock journalist. He's an author, but today we're going to talk about him being a vocalist. I guess I should also mention that you're an editor of Rock Candy Magazine, which we'll hopefully talk a little bit about that when we're done here. But today we want to talk about Howard and his singing. So Howard, thank you for joining me, and how are you today?
I'm real good, thanks, Brad, and it's nice to be here.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. So, yeah, so this came across, I mean, I had no idea that you were a singer. I had no idea that you had a band. Apparently the band's been kind of sleeping for a little while, and the band is called Dawn After Dark. So why all of a sudden now, after what appears to be 32 years, you guys are doing an album? What's going on?
Yeah, it's a crazy story, isn't it, Brad? The band was active in the 80s when I was one of the main writers on Kerrang! Magazine, and we were probably one of the hardest gigging bands in the UK at the time. We probably did over 150 shows in just over 2.5 years, so we were playing a lot at that time. And of course, it was a very different time. Smaller record labels had budgets to sign smaller bands. It's not like today, of course, where unless you have 50,000 followers on Spotify, you're very unlikely to get the interest of a label. So we did a lot of work, and we put out 3 EPs on a well-known label in the UK, which was called Chapter 22. And like is the way of many of these things, there were fallouts and unnecessary problems within the band around about 1990, and the band faded away. And that was really the last I thought of it. And I thought, well, that's going to be a good memory that will stay with me for a long time, because it was very enjoyable. And completely out of the clear blue sky in 2019, somebody got in touch with me who was promoting a show from another band who we played with a lot in the 80s called Balaam and the Angel. They had a deal with Virgin, and they came to the States a couple of times. So, you know, some people may remember that group. And the show was in Birmingham, which is our local city, home, obviously, as you know, of a huge number of great rock bands, from Judas Priest to Black Sabbath to Led Zeppelin. And we were asked if we would be interested in playing this show with a reformed version of the group. And I was still in touch with the drummer in the group. And to cut a long story short, we decided that we would do the show. And we had no idea how it would go. And what happened was, on the day of the show, we were opening the show for Balaam. And I turned up in Birmingham, and all around town were people wearing Dawn After Dark shirts, which really surprised and thrilled me, because we hadn't played a show in 30 years, a huge amount of time. But the old fans were still there, and they turned out, and we played the show, and it was a fantastic experience. Everybody thought the band sounded better than ever, and out of that we decided that really we thought there was unfinished business, because we never recorded an album, and of course the sounds of records in those days weren't the quality that you can produce now. And so from that one show in 30 years, it snowballed, and now there is an album that's due out in December, a first single called Maximum Overdrive, which came out last week, and a lot of interest in seeing a bunch of guys who are a lot older and probably should be wiser, doing what they love again.
That's awesome, man. I'm telling you, I firmly believe that rock music keeps you young. Now, you said just the drummer. Are the other guys new guys to the band, or some of them from the original band?
Yeah, it's actually me and Tony Henderson, who is the original drummer of the band. We did try extremely hard to contact the 3 other band members. One, the guitar player George Craig, was just untraceable.
Wow.
And Tony is like a bloodhound when he gets the idea of trying to find someone. And even he couldn't locate him. He was reduced to finding a phone book and looking up all the G. Craigs he could find in the phone book and phoning and asking if it was him, and still he was unsuccessful. So George couldn't be located. Dave Askey, who was the original bass player, very sadly died in 2008. So obviously there was no possibility of Dave being involved. And the other guitar player, Rich Bardsley, we managed to locate him. We had some meetings, and he just didn't feel able to commit to it to the extent that we felt would be needed to do the band at the level we wanted to. So Rich gracefully bowed out.
Yeah.
So it is 3 new players. Obviously, we're a lot older and wiser than we were back in the 80s, and I think that, like you say, rock music keeps people young, but it also means that there's a 30 years of experience of playing within the group now, and I know that you've heard the song, and I think it shows that the level of musicianship and the style in which we play is now highly proficient, and we sound like a band that's not been away.
Yeah, let's talk about that song, Maximum Overdrive. Now, from the press release, it looks like this song has a bit of a history. Was this previously recorded by you guys, or tell me the story of the song?
Yeah, I mean, there is an interesting story with Maximum Overdrive. It was the 3rd single that we released on Chapter 22, and it came out in 1989. And probably the most interesting part of that for your listeners will be the fact that the original version of this song was produced by none other than Stevie Young, who is now the guitar player in AC/DC.
Yeah, that is interesting. And like I said, I've heard the song. I like the song a lot. It's just good driving rock and roll. It sounds good, very well produced, which I guess I should ask you about that. Tell me about the producer on this album.
The producer on the album is a guy called Andy Taylor. He's not the guy who you might know as the guitar player from Duran Duran and the Power Station. He just shares a name. But Andy has worked with Tony on numerous projects over the years, and we were just thrilled to be able to get the chance to work with him, because I think he's one of the most talented producers out there. And for a band that was obviously working to a budget, we managed to produce a recording that I think is comparable with some of the best work that's out there. And for 5 days of work, we're extremely proud of what we did.
Yeah, like I said, it sounds really good. It does not sound like something somebody did in their basement. It's top quality. The song's good, and the recording is good, and we're going to be playing the heck out of it, by the way. So
that's nice.
Yeah. So other than Yargmetal, where can people actually listen to this song and get their free download?
Well, as you just mentioned there, we wanted to really celebrate the return of music after everything that we've gone through over the last 2 years with COVID. And so we decided that what we would do would be to just give away this song to anybody who wanted a download of it. And they can do that by going to our website, which is www.thedawners.com, thedawners.com. Yeah. And all you need to do is sign up for the Dawn After Dark mailing list, and by the glories of modern technology, we will ping you an MP3 of Maximum Overdrive by return.
That's fantastic. And yeah, I'll put that up on the screen so people will know exactly where to go and get this song, which I think everybody should. Everybody, the whole reason we have this radio station, besides fun and because we love music, is because we want to promote new music. There's so much new music out there that people just don't even know about, and like you guys. So I'm hoping people will embrace this and will download the single, and then when the album comes out, that they'll actually get it. I assume it'll probably be available all the ways that kids get things, the streaming and whatnot, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm a little bit old school, obviously, in that I'm still somebody who likes the smell of vinyl. CD might even be considered a little bit modern for me. So there's going to be a CD version of the album. There will also be a vinyl version of the album, and obviously one of the things that you mentioned there that's absolutely true is there is a lot of new music out there, but because of the way that streaming platforms work, there's very little opportunity for new bands to be able to earn off their efforts. And of course, like our band, most people do music for the love of it, and any money that's made goes straight back into the band. But of course, streaming is it causes a very difficult problem for up and coming bands. So we hope that people will support the group by buying a physical copy. And as I say, there's going to be a CD version. There'll be a pre-order of the CD and the album version. And again, people can find that information from our website. The pre-order will happen around about the start of October, and obviously we would hope that people would support our endeavours.
Yeah, that would be great. And again, we're going to be promoting it, and we will be buying the album, because that's another thing we do here at Yargmetal. We actually buy the music we play because, again, we feel it's important to support the artist, because even though we're all doing this for fun and for the love of the music, it's not realistic for everybody to do this for free, because it does cost money.
I think that's probably something that, we're all guilty of somehow laying to one side and not thinking about. Obviously, I've now become poacher turned gamekeeper in some ways, from being a music journalist to now being a singer. But it's really apparent to me that it's a difficult process these days for small bands to be able to get their music out to people, get out on tour, play shows without the support of a major record company. And so you're absolutely right. It's a passion, it's a labour of love, and it costs us money to do what we do. But we hope that once we're out on the road, that obviously people support us by buying the CDs and buying the merchandise, and that they feel that the music, which at the end of the day is the most important thing, stands up on its own. We've tried very, very hard to make sure that our music sounds comparable with anything that's out there, and I think that that shows in the quality of the single.
Yeah, and I'm going to challenge everybody that's listening to this to listen to Maximum Overdrive, and tell me if that doesn't get your foot tapping and your head bobbing, then I think something's wrong with you, and you need to start looking in the mirror there, because it rocks, and I'm 100% behind it. So I want to talk to you about being a singer. Were you a singer before a rock journalist, or did that come later? Which came first?
No, the rock journalism very much came first, Brad. I started out, I had a very lucky break when I was just 16 years old. I'd been writing my own heavy metal fanzine while I was still at school, and I remember sending copies off to the music newspapers in the UK at the time that were the most important ones. There was one called Sounds, and there was one called the New Musical Express, and they were very big papers at the time. But they weren't really focused on heavy rock music, and that was my passion. And it just so happened that at the time I sent a copy of my fanzine to the editors of those newspapers, that one of them, Sounds, was being run by a company that was investigating the possibility of launching a heavy metal magazine. And that heavy metal magazine turned out to be Kerrang! And so by a very fortuitous set of circumstances, I landed on an editor's desk at exactly the right time. And so I was taken on to write for Kerrang! When I was just 17. So wow. That has to go down as one of the luckiest breaks in musical history.
That's like a fantasy come true. I can't even imagine at 17 something like that happening. That's brilliant. That's great. So
when you see the movie Almost Famous,
yes, that
just feels like my life when I watch it. It's bizarre.
Now I got to go watch that movie again. That is a good movie. So yeah, but then how did you decide all of a sudden? I want to try singing, or do you play an instrument or?
I play very bad guitar, but not at any level to play in a band. That's for sure. I think what happened was the whole hair metal era became so huge in America at that time, and I was constantly being flown to the States to interview bands. And I think that while much of that music wasn't to my taste, I have perhaps a more traditional classic rock European taste. But what it did show me when I came to America in 83, 84, 85 was that there was so much passion in that country for rock music, because rock music in the UK, despite the fact that Kerrang became such an important and influential magazine, was always a minority sport. It was not mainstream. Rock music is not part of the fabric of people's lives in the way that it is in America. And I think being in America and seeing that acceptance and love for rock music in all its forms was probably the thing that motivated me most to want to do it.
Wow. So you just grabbed a mic and just went for it, huh?
Yeah, I mean it was nothing more sophisticated than that. I saw that there used to be in the back of another of the music newspapers, the Melody Maker was well known for its classified ads at the back of the paper, which is where all musicians found each other. And I don't just mean musicians, at the very lowest level. Major bands would advertise when they were looking for new players. It would be advertised in the Melody Maker, and it was well known as a marketplace for musicians of all kinds. And I saw an advert in the paper for a band that was actually really more about what we would call the alternative scene in the UK at the time. So Killing Joke and The Cult, New Model Army, and they were looking for a singer, and that's where I decided to chance my arm. And that's where Dawn After Dark started, because the band is a really interesting blend, because we came out of what you might call the alternative scene in the UK, even though I was writing for a very traditional heavy metal magazine. And I think the band has always straddled those two areas of music. I love the power of rock music, and I like the invention of the alternative scene, where it seemed like there were so many people doing so many interesting things. And I think that Dawn After Dark is a kind of amalgam of those times. We play with the power of a traditional rock band, and yet some of the music that we make is perhaps what you might call more influence from the alternative scene. So, Killing Joke and the Cult are bands that are particularly dear to us.
Yeah, I definitely hear that in the music. Well, of course, I've only heard the one song. Well, tell me, who's the principal writer of your music?
Well, the writing's a really interesting situation, because a lot of the music that we've recorded for the album is music that existed in one form or another in the first incarnation of the band, so in the late 80s. Now, we talk to our fans. We have a pretty lively fan base who are well engaged with us, and we spoke to them about what they particularly wanted from the album. And they were very adamant that they wanted to hear new recordings of the 3 singles that we did back in the 80s, so that was a given. But there were a number of songs at that point that were never recorded, and they were in varying states of completion. Some of them were perfectly formed. Some of them were songs that we played live, but with 30 years of hindsight, we went, there were perhaps areas that we could improve, certain bridges, certain verses that we felt could be improved. But the core of all the songs that are on the album have their roots in what the band was doing in the late 80s.
Okay. All right. Are you the principal lyric writer?
Yeah, all the lyrics and all the vocal melodies are mine. And the actual music is really a combination of everybody who's there. The guys who are there in the 80s, plus the guys who we play with now, are obviously all part of that songwriting evolution and songwriting process. So the credits for the songs are shared between the guys who are around in the 80s plus the guys who play in the band now.
That's I can't wait to hear the album. So, but I guess I'll wait till December and we'll do that. All right. So again, the name of the band is Dawn After Dark. It appears that people like to call you the Dawners.
That's correct.
It's always good to have a nickname. that probably something you didn't push. I assume your fans probably
No,
brought that.
it was very much our following in the 80s who decided that the Dawn is what we should be share, what we were known as.
Yeah, if you got fans that are going to come up with a nickname for you, that's paving the road to success in my mind as far as a band goes. So good name, and yeah, good thing you didn't have to come up with a new name, because I'll tell you what, coming up with a new band name now is near impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that worry.
All right. Well, cool. Hey, thank you for talking to us. But real quick, I want to talk about one of my favorite things in the rock world, and that's Rock Candy Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the very first one, and you are the editor of that magazine. And I noticed that, initially the magazine came out and it was kind of a retread of previously written things, obviously dealing with classic bands, 70s, 80s, that kind of stuff. But it's morphed into more of a a lot of current interviews with maybe classic artists, and also trying to kind of promote some newer music. Tell us a little bit about the magazine so people might get interested in that.
Yeah, well, the magazine was really the brainchild of myself and two other Kerrang journalists who I worked with in the 80s, Malcolm Dome and Derek Oliver. And the concept was very simple. We just felt that the magazines that were around were not paying enough attention to the bands that we felt were, the core acts of the Kerrang days. And it was about, in many ways, being unashamedly retro about the groups that we loved, but in also trying to update the way that we talked about those groups in a way that would be more fitting to people of our age. As you get older, you obviously want to have a little bit more depth to the articles and a bit more understanding of the realities of what it's like to be in a rock band. Of course, Kerrang was fantastic at showing its enthusiasm and love of the music and the energy, but I think Rock Candy has retained all that love for the music, but brings to it a certain depth in how we talk to people now, the interviews that we run. And as you say, we talk to all the classic bands now, and we run interviews to 12, 15 pages, and we really go deep on, be it Styx or Judas Priest or Journey or AC/DC, all those classic Kerrang bands. And I think we treat them with respect for the music, but also a real desire to understand what the stories were behind those groups. And of course, you get those stories now because the guys who made those records and are still making music are much more open. They've spent a long time in the music industry, and they obviously have stories to tell. But what I particularly like about it is they're not towing the company line anymore. They're telling you a lot of truths about what their life was really like and what was really going on in those bands. And I think that level of understanding of bands is really refreshing to me. And because if I love a band, I want to go deep.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, in the current edition, the one that has Styx on the cover, there's an article that you wrote, an interview with John Waite, and I'm pretty sure it's the first time I've ever heard him talk about really how he wrote Missing You. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible when you think about it, isn't it? That, in all the years that John has been around, that he wouldn't have been asked to describe, the detail of how that song came together, because it's such an important song. And I guess that is one of the unique things about Rock Candy, is because the three of us were there in the 80s. We were, boots on the ground, going on the road with those people, getting to know those people as individuals. I think it affords us a certain level of complicity, I suppose is the word you'd use. When you talk to people now, when you interview them now, you get much more of a sense that they are telling you a much deeper tale than they might were you somebody who they didn't know, who hadn't been there first time around. hadn't already kind of earned their stripes, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's great. It's a great interview, and it's a great magazine. The one thing I really like about it as well is that it's quality material. I mean, as far as the photos, the paper that's used, I know it's kind of a little bit pricey over here in the U.S. to get it, but it's worth it. It's worth every penny, and I love holding it. I love leafing through it. I know anybody that comes to my house and seeing it lying around, they'll pick it up and they'll leaf through it, and they'll go like, "What is this?" And
I know it's it's a labour of love. Like we were talking about bands, I think that nowadays, if you look at the statistics about what kind of percentage of music, streaming sales is rock these days, it's become a minority sport. But we are all very passionate about that music. We all have a great deal of love for it. And I think that comes across in the pages of the magazine. And the fact that we still produce a physical magazine is, again, a statement about, where our heads are at. That we are very attached to that 80s era, and just want to enjoy some of the things that we enjoyed at the time. Holding something in your hand was a real thrill, and I think it would be a shame if that wasn't the case still today. It brings with it a lot of problems, because obviously you have all kinds of issues of distribution, where if it were a digital only magazine, you'd press a button and it would be in the inboxes of everybody who was subscribed. So it takes some dedication to keep the flame for print alive.
Yeah, well, you do get a digital you get a digital version of it when you subscribe. But I got to be honest with you, watching it on my computer, clicking through and everything is just not as satisfying as holding it in my hand. And it's just a great experience, and I encourage everybody to look into Rock Candy Magazine, and we'll put a link up for that as well. So, Howard, thank you so much for talking to us today. Hopefully we'll get to talk again and talk more about your experiences visiting with bands and other interviews. And I'll one more time, Maximum Overdrive. We're going to share the video on our Facebook. So people who follow us on Facebook can easily just click on it and watch the video there. And yes, there is a video. And then we'll also put the links for your website and how you can get the song. And, of course, we're going to be playing the song, and we're going to be playing it a lot. And when the album comes out, we'll hopefully be playing a lot of that as well. So thank you, Howard.
Well, I really appreciate it, Brad. It's been lovely talking to you.